Hello everyone. In this video, I will show my research product. On November 30, a tweet released by the Deputy Director of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs Information Department has attracted wide attention, and this controversial tweet received more than 11,000 retweets. So I will analyze the tweet series diplomatic reports and news reports to show how Orientalism is applied and has an impact on people's ideology and behaviors. So this whole presentation will consist of four parts: the introduction, rhetorical rhetoric, uh, framework analysis, and conclusion. So first, the research question. So this paper will deal with two main issues. First, rhetorical analysis, how a series of artifacts reflect Orientalism, and the second, as an extension, considering the possibility of the liberation of diplomatic conflict between China and Australia. I try to explain why the Western society reacted so intensely to a tweet from the Chinese government. So let's begin with the written report. The Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force. So this report mentioned that there are some Australian soldiers, they murdered some civilians in Afghanistan, and there are some data here in this report. So I will use Said's Orientalism to analyze the selected artifacts from the perspective of post-colonial criticism. So this is because the post-colonial theory focused on power, economy, political, religious, and cultural issues and how those factors are related to colonial hegemony. So these two core concepts, the unique perspective of empire and the hegemonic ideology of colonialism. These two concepts can help me to explain the relationship between the West and the East. So, in detail, the Orientalism provides a real rationalization basis for European colonialism, a history of self-serving. So the Occident, the West, construct the Orient, the East, as a very different and inferior one. So it needs Western intervention or salvation. So this means that Orientalism provides a world outlook, a method of practical and cultural discrimination, and explain the application of discourse power. So those descriptions seem to indicate the Western stereotypes or fantasism about the Orient. So based on the Britain report, the Li Jianzhao, he used a cartoon created by a Chinese artist to accuse Australian soldiers of their anti-human rights actions. So I noticed that in this cartoon, a typical Christian symbol, the white lamb. So the in the Bible, the God allowed the believers who succeeded in passing the test to sacrifice the lamb instead of his child. So this shows the mercy of the God. But in this cartoon, an Australian soldier killed a child instead of the lamb. So this is a strong irony. So in this way, the artist hopes to show the double standards of Western society in the face of human rights issues. So of course, this powerful rhetorical force immediately uh, aroused the dissatisfaction of the Australian Prime Minister. The Morrison asked China to delete this uh, repugnant ADF tweet. His thing is uh, disgusting. So Morrison claimed that the picture used by Zhao was false and that the Chinese government should be ashamed of it. So, and here is the first statement. So Morrison's response reflects the view that in Orientalism, the European culture gained in strength and identity by setting itself up against the Orient. So just like the Cassie's report title, How China is Planning to Win Back the World. So Cassie regards the action of the Chinese government as propaganda war. So the word politics or propaganda are often used to undermine the credibility of speaker's statement because if it is claims that somebody's speech is political or is a propaganda, people's attention will turn to confirm the identity and the intention of the speaker rather than the content and the logic they may provide. So we need to pay attention to Cassie's description of Chinese government behavior, so such as the word, like the sentence here, the spin, the up, obfuscation, and the hyperbole, and outright disinformation. So Cassie's assertion directly defines the behavior of Chinese diplomats in her own way and own perspective. So this is in line with the theories of the Orientalism. That is, the cultural representation usually depict the East as irrational, violent, autocratic, and essentially inferior to that of the Westerners. So here, the concept of the East was created by the West, and Europe confirms and reshapes its identity by confronting the East that is against the so-called evil forces. So on the other hand, the Edward Said proposed that Orientalism as a Western style for dominating, restructuring, and having authority over the Orient. So, in fact, the West dominated the description of the Orient. The Orient, under the concept of Orientalism, is not a reflection of the real East. The Orientals, the local people, they do not describe their culture very well because they live there, but they do not have the right to speak. So the West represent them and speak for them. So very similar. The Kevin Rudd, the former Prime Minister of Australia, he criticized Morrison's for his failed diplomatic performance. So he think Morrison should not have fallen into a dispute with a diplomat as a prime minister. So it reflects the existence of hegemonic ideology. So this expression shifts the focus, and this is also shows that the West has strong discourse power, which means that some Western media, they can guide or control public opinion and interpret events in their own way. So we also need to uh, notice that the Britain report has proved that the criminal action of murdering the civilians by Australian soldiers, but the above Australia reports intentionally or unintentionally ignore the evaluation of this fact. So here I want to borrow a concept, defocus, to explain this rhetorical phenomena. So Morrison skillfully used the word force to shift people's attention. So interestingly, this picture is indeed fake because it is just a cartoon. It's not a photograph, but it's not false because it reflects the truth. So rhetoric is applied here. So Morrison used the word force to try to guide the public opinion that the remarks of Chinese diplomats are not factually true. So people start talking about whether China is qualified to criticize Australian human rights issues rather than discuss how Australia should deal with crimes in their army. So for the further research, I just want to know if the computation of the discourse, however, increase, how do the Western countries respond to the challenges from the third world countries, from the Orient, from like China? So in conclusion, let's answer the first two research questions. So Orientalism explains why the West has prejudice against the East. The East is regarded as the other and a backward in public opinion. The West maintains its own figures, which is democratic, free, and civilized. This kind of prejudice reveals that relationship between the West and the East is a kind of power of relationship, a ruling relationship, and a complicated hegemonic relationship in varying degrees, so which come from the theory of Orientalism. However, the second question, the Chinese diplomats counterattack has broken the traditional image of the East. So that is the silent Orientals. So the Easterners tried to regain the right to speak through the counterattack. So this destroyed the long-standing hegemonic ideological system, which is why the Western society has reacted so intensely. So thanks for listening.